This is the Norris Group's Real Estate Investor Radio Show, the award-winning show dedicated to thought leaders shaping the real estate industry and local experts revealing their insider tips to succeed in an ever-changing real estate market. Hosted by author, investor, and hard money lender, Bruce Norris.
Hey everybody, it's Aaron Norris with the Norris Group, and today we are joined by Rob Hahn, who is the founder and managing partner of 7DS Associates, a strategy consulting firm specializing in creative solutions rooted in strategic analysis and data. He's got one of the most varied backgrounds you could possibly imagine, from finance, corporate law, technology, product development, media and entertainment, startups, fashion, and even a professional card player. I have to know, what kind of cards?
It was Magic the Gathering, which is kind of like poker for nerds, introduced back in 1993.
Okay, I've never even heard of the game. Well, you might be familiar with Rob's work as he writes on the well-known blog Notorious R.O.B, where he opines on topics in real estate, technology, marketing, and strategy. And you'll find him at numerous industry events, including Inman Connect, T3 Summit, as well as local, state, and national association events. So thank you for joining us again. It's cool to have you back a year later, as we really got to nerd out about a year ago. Yeah, we got to nerd out a year ago, and we were really talking about News Corp versus Zillow. And I was just reading, doing some research for the interview today, and I saw an article that Morgan Stanley says that Realtor.com is now worth $2.5 billion.
Okay, who am I to contradict Morgan Stanley?
Well, it's because they bought it. News Corp bought Realtor.com in 2014, so that would be a nice. What tech company isn't worth $1 billion these days? I guess is my question.
I suppose these days, right? I mean, if you're not worth $1 billion, then you're worth nothing, I suppose. So good for them.
And and I forgot if we covered this last time. Maybe I don't understand who owns who. So News Corp owns Realtor.com. Does the National Association of Realtor have any ownership in?
No. No, not anymore. I think before, my understanding is when Move Inc. was its own company, NAR had some shares, some stake in it somehow. But when News Corp bought them out, I believe that NAR's stake was retired one way or another. And I don't know exactly how the financial structure was, but NAR is still important because they have the Realtor brand, and therefore the Realtor.com URL, the brand, everything is done under license, and that license agreement is actually pretty important. So, but they have no equity stake as far as I know.
That's really scary. So, okay, we've got News Corp that purchased Realtor.com back in 2014, and so now News Corp owns a bunch of different websites at this point. So what else do they own?
In the real estate space, the biggest one is, I think it's realestate.co.au. It's essentially a dominant real estate portal in Australia. I think they own some real estate website operations in the UK, I believe. But I'd say the two big ones are Realtor.com here in the States and realestate.co out in Australia.
Okay. And then, let's see, Zillow has close to 165 million users on its website monthly, and it owns Zillow, Trulia, Street Easy, Hot Pads, and Naked Apartments. I was afraid to visit that at work. I don't think I've ever visited. I've never visited that before. So Zillow is obviously still the dominant player, and most importantly, they have a huge share of the mobile market. It's over 70% now, am I correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe so, yes.
And
they're huge. I mean, they're dominant.
And so the other two things we talked about last time were Syndicators and the MLS. So I was very surprised to find out there was an organization called the CMLS, which is basically an association of MLSs all across the United States. I had no idea they existed. So that's interesting. And then you've got Syndicators. Syndicators are basically, they just push the data out to all these smaller sites. And I mean...
Yeah, I mean, they used to be much more important. But I'd say, for the last few years, I mean, they've really lost, their value for a couple of reasons. One is the biggest syndicator, ListHub, was owned by Move. And Zillow, a few years back, essentially said, we're not going to take a fee from ListHub anymore because it's owned by our largest competitor. Okay. And obviously, when you're no longer syndicating to the number one and number two websites, the value doesn't really last. Then the second thing is, of course, the syndication technology is really not all that, it's not rocket science. So a lot of MLSs can do it themselves directly. and a number of them have implemented that. So I'd say at this point, I mean, they're not unimportant, but I'd say that the value of the syndicators, has fallen dramatically.
Well, and when I look at real estate data and where it's getting pushed out to, it just seems like that landscape has changed as well. So, I was when I first discovered ListHub, I was so excited back in 2009 because otherwise I was having to individually go into every single website and update things manually, and it took hours. And then when I was tracking back actual conversions, it was none. Some of them maybe gave a modicum of, some eyeballs on my website, but then, the California Association of Realtors, they produce market data, what buyers are looking at. And I always laugh because a broker or an agent's website always ranks last on being helpful to the end buyer. So I'm like, wow, we're spending a lot of money and time on things that the buyers don't even care about. So maybe it's a seller expectation anyway. So I was wondering if Syndicators' value had definitely disappeared, and any thoughts on that market? I was just reading an article that you had just written about Upstream. Is that?
Yeah. And so without getting too much into the weeds, I mean, I don't think there's any value in syndicators anymore. I mean, that's just my take on it. Obviously, other people disagree, and they think it's really important to sort of control the pipeline of data, to the World Wide Web. I just don't see it. Right? Number one, like I said, it's not hard. Just about any MLS that wants to do syndication directly in 2017, they can do it. If they don't do it, it's not for the lack of technology or not for the lack of, ability to do it. They just don't want to. Same thing goes for brokers, pretty much the same thing goes for agents. If they want to get something out to the web, they can. And at the same time, there is something to consider in terms of, and this is, again, is probably, going off track a little bit, but in 2017, I mean, can you imagine some organization, some group, some industry deciding we're not going to put information on the web, which is, what the consumers use? Like, I just don't see how that's going to not get the government involved, and they will. So I don't, I'm just like not all that concerned about it. I mean, as I've been saying for a while, I felt like syndication, that whole thing, I thought we had killed that debate off, years ago, and apparently it hasn't. It's come back from the dead like a zombie, and we have to talk about it, continue to talk about it some. Oh, well.
Well, and I think agents are getting a little smarter, or maybe it's just buyers have their preference of sites that they're going to visit. When you do a search on Google, there's really only a handful of sites that aren't paid that end up popping up. And, it's very rare that we go beyond the first page, and all those are the same players over and over again. I will note that at least here in California, Realtor.com has increased in its rankings in the last year. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, no, those guys have been doing a great job, I think, especially after, News Corp and injection of some more capital, some more talent. I think they've done a great job. At the same time, I remember a few years ago, I remember writing about this, like, all this, sort of agita and brouhaha about websites it's just outdated, considering that mobile is here now, right? So, and we can keep talking about website syndication, but really at the end of the day, if you don't have a mobile app in the App Store or, in a Google Play Store, whatever, that's not in the top 5, like, you're out of the game, right? You're just not even relevant. So I'd almost want to start there.
And for a lot of agents, I mean, it's not very practical. It's very costly and expensive, even at the brokerage level, unless you're working with a major chain that's investing in these kind of tools. So a mobile-friendly website, Mobilegeddon happened, in 2014. So that's the one thing they can do. But if their data is being correctly displayed in Zillow, Trulia, Realtor.com, for the most part, it seems like they've got it covered, right?
I think, to me, that war, that fight, that whole issue has been over for years and years and years. It's just, I don't know. Like I said, just keeps coming back from the dead. So we got to keep talking about him, until he crawls back into a grave and talk about something else next.
Well, lots has been going on with Zillow, particularly in the last couple months. They've had all kinds of fun stuff. So we've got a lawsuit, I guess is the first one, and I didn't get to really fully read into it. Do you know much about the lawsuit against the Zest?
I haven't read the filing, but basically it seems like the claim is from it's actually from home builders saying that by displaying a Zestimate, of their property, they're being forced to use an agent, to represent their home. I'm like, okay, I guess we'll see what the court has to say. And, lawyers are going to make the best possible arguments. I just don't see it. I just don't. They're saying this is like an appraisal. It's an illegal appraisal. All right, I guess, make whatever argument you want. But, like I do know a few appraisers, and I spoke with some folks of the Appraisal Institute, and I don't think any of those folks believe that a AVM is some sort of an appraisal.
I would have to agree.
It's been around forever, right? So we'll see. I mean, we'll see what the court says. I don't see this going that far. Maybe this is just them trying to get some sort of settlement out of Zillow. Some nuisance suit. Look, here's $50,000, go away. Who knows? But I don't see anything coming out of it.
I only wanted to touch on that real quick because it'll come into play later. So we've got the lawsuit, and then we've got the $1 million competition to improve the Zestimate. So they're hiring anybody who can, I don't know, provide code that makes their AVM model work even better. They're willing to give $1 million to, huh?
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
why not?
What's $1 million to Zillow, right? The revenue's like $1 billion a year. Like, yeah, what's $1 million? Whatever. But if you get some smart, I don't know, Caltech grads to put some brain power behind it, hey, good for them. I think that's a wonderful idea.
Well, it brings up a question. Is Zillow profitable yet?
I believe I know they were profitable a couple of quarters. I don't know if they were for the entire year. I don't think they were. But you know what? Everyone asks that question. I kind of feel like it's unimportant, right? Because what those guys have said, and Spencer said this on a number of investor calls and whatnot, which is they don't care to make profit right now. They're still doing market share. They're still doing branding. They're still doing all of that. And at some point when they get tired of that, they'll start to monetize and actually start to make a profit. So I know a lot of those guys, and I just don't think they're worried about it,
Well, they got a lot of irons in the fire, and I just wanted to hit those 3 points real quick so we can start talking about sort of what's coming up. So the biggest iron in the fire, or at least has caused probably the most controversy, is the instant offer. So you want to describe what the instant offer is and how it works?
Sure. I mean, the Inman News actually had some really good write-up about it. But effectively what it is some homeowner goes on Zillow, they're surfing around, and maybe get some sort of call to action, click a button, get an instant offer in your house. They have to go in and fill out a form, right? And sort of say, okay, here's my house, this is my address, I've got stainless steel appliances, granite countertops, whatever. And then you hit submit, and that information gets sent to one of 15 institutional investors, essentially, that were selected by Zillow, as well as one or more agents kind of work that market. Now, this is a test that Zillow is doing in 2 markets, Las Vegas and Orlando. Mm-hmm. And I think, and at the end of it, the consumer would get some sort of an offer, from an investor saying, hey, I'll buy your home for this, and here are my fees and whatever else, here's the terms. And if they decide they want to take it, then I guess the investor works with them to buy their house. Or at the same time, they would get a CMA, a comparative market analysis report from a realtor, in the area, who says, hey, I could sell your home for this, right? And then presumably that leads to some sort of a listing appointment. The realtor comes in, visits your house, looks around, and gives you, the whole pitch. And if you decide to list it with them, then off you go, right? The standard process. That's what it is. And I thought it was okay. This makes sense. This is essentially a listing lead generation tool. If the test is successful and Zillow starts generating listing leads, homeowners saying, hey, I want to list my house, like, good Lord, they're going to make a gazillion dollars, right? It's going to be probably the most successful product they've ever had. But, the industry just kind of went completely crazy. That's the only way to put it.
Yeah, you wrote a really great sort of rebuttal to the meltdown, which I thought was pretty awesome. And what's funny...
I've written 2.
What has been the response from the article you wrote?
I think that people are commenting, for the most part, probably think similarly as I do. There were some disagreements, right? There's some folks who are basically like, we just don't trust Zillow, right? This is them dipping their toe into the brokerage waters. They want to cut us out, so on and so forth. To to something like that, I just feel like, hey, you're free not to trust Zillow. You know what I mean? I trust them because they've always behaved in a self-interested manner, like any corporation would. Mm-hmm. Like everything that they've ever done has been to try and, make more money and raise their shareholder price, share price. And like that's what I expect of, all corporations, right? Whether they're Zillow or Apple or, General Motors, like none of those guys are in business for charity. So, I trust them in that sense. But a lot of folks just have a real fear, right? And unfortunately, within the real estate industry, I feel like sometimes it's gotten to the point of like irrational just hate, Zillow fever. I did a podcast recording earlier today with Greg Robertson. He and I do a podcast called Industry Relations. And he sort of likened it to kind of Trump mania, right? Mm. Where some people, no matter what Trump does, like hates it. No matter what. If he does something, he hates it. If he doesn't, he hates it. And it's kind of the same way with Zillow and some of the real estate industry. Like no matter what they do, they're going to hate it. And I don't know where it comes from.
I get the concern, especially if realtors, a large part of the income that Zillow is making is directly from advertising dollars from realtors. So there's this feeling like, okay, you're dipping your toes in the brokerage waters, and I'm paying for the benefit for you to take business from me. But you did a beautiful job in the article saying, to be honest with you, and I'm a real estate investor and we work with real estate investors. So if they're going to sell to a realtor, one of my rentals that I bought a few years back, they were never going to even talk to a realtor or entertain that because they weren't going to have a realtor, walk through their house. They were never going to go that route. So I think you're right. It's a very interesting way to also find out maybe the motivation, to find out how motivated a seller is and what a valuable lead if they're giving that information. There's something very interesting about an online application. People might be a little bit more willing to tell you something that they might have a harder time in person, and being able to the realtor to land that lead and know a little bit more of the motivation behind even looking into selling it quickly. I don't know. It's be interesting to see how it works.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting that you bring that angle up, because here's the thing. Opendoor launched in 2014. Okay. And I've been talking to Opendoor from the very beginning, saying these guys are potentially like the most important company in real estate. When I did that, I remember writing the post about Opendoor and talking about it, and the consistent comments I would get would be things like, these guys are just, we buy ugly houses. They're just, flippers have been around forever. What's the big deal? And any homeowner that wants to leave, $30,000 on the table to sell to an investor, they're morons, and so on and so forth. All of a sudden, Zillow does instant offers, and it's like, this is a threat to the republic. Guys, it's one or the other, right? If Opendoor is just, we buy ugly houses, then Zillow's instant offer is just a way for we buy ugly houses to get more leads. Like, who cares? None of those guys are going to sell with a realtor anyway.
Well, that was going to be my next topic anyway. So if people aren't familiar with Opendoor, it is really fascinating. It's really the used car model, sort of like the CarMax of real estate, and they've done a very beautiful job. So when did Opendoor start, and what's the game plan?
Obviously I'm not privy to their, ultimate strategy, right? Ultimate thing. But they started in 2014. But I remember reading an article where the founder, Keith Rabois, formerly of PayPal, formerly of Square. He's one of the biggest players in Silicon Valley. Apparently he's been thinking about it for like 9-10 years, right? Where, his whole thing was the process of buying a house or selling a house is just so painful. And is there some way to make this easier by using technology? And I think they've come up with an interesting sort of take on trying to do that, right? You just walk in and you offer cash. That's one way, right? Because then there's no mortgage contingency, there's none of that. Opendoor walks in, says, I'll write you a check, and we'll close in 3 days. So, I think those guys are up to some really interesting stuff. I think Zillow's instant offer was an effort to compete with it, and we'll see. The market it's not going to be 100%, I don't think, anytime soon. Do you know what I mean? For most people, they're not willing to leave money on the table for their home the way they are with a car. Now, that could change if selling to an investor only meant, 1 or 2 points, right? Mm-hmm. Versus 9 or 10 points. So we'll see. I mean, I think everything comes down to finance. I think everything comes down to economics.
Well, I was reading some articles on some of the things they've got going on, and in some ways it reminds me a lot of the auction industry. A lot of people like to do the auction because there's a definitive close date. You know it's going to be done. Financing is not an issue. It's done that day. So I like it. You drive up with your house, you drop it off, you know what price you're going to get, you walk away. And then they have these partnerships with builders like Lennar. So they have this trading valuation. So of course, right now in a market where the inventory is tight, the mortgages are really hard to get, being able to roll over, and for them to expedite that process and make it easier. Yeah, that is really an important service in this market right now.
Sure. And, one of the more interesting things that Opendoor is doing is the whole trade-in concept, right? Mm-hmm. Where if you sell them a house and you buy a house from them, they just, do it like a auto trade-in. I mean, that's super interesting, right? Because most people move within like 15 miles, right? Most people aren't moving across the country. Most people are, staying in the same town. They're just, moving to a different neighborhood, getting a bigger house, what have you. Boy, that could be all kinds of interesting if that takes off.
Well, and I was trying to, it seems like for the houses that they purchased, the goal is just to fix it up and then resell it. If that they're not necessarily holding on to these. Is that sort of the sense you got as well?
That's the sense I got from everything I've read about Opendoor. That's their model. They just they're flippers.
Right. And for real estate investors, which is our main market, Opendoor and Zillow Instant Offers are certainly competitors of ours, and I have to hope that Zillow might open it up. Do you have any idea with the instant offers who these 15 hedge fund buyers are?
I don't, and I think Inman listed a couple of them. I think I did read that OfferPad was one of the 15, which is interesting because they're a direct competitor to Opendoor. But my sense is that it's not. My sense is they only chose the 15 because of the test. Right, within two markets. Okay. Which then I actually have a question for you because you are so heavily involved in the real estate investment community. Mm-hmm. If this were open to everybody, right? Now maybe you have to qualify, prove that you've got the money, prove that you're, a real investor. Mm-hmm. I mean, then I have to assume then they stop being a competitor, right? They become a marketplace for you where you go in and see what offers are out there.
Sure. And, it's interesting. Our community tends to be a little behind the 8 ball when it comes to technology, especially in this market. At least here in California, we've gone through the cycle of short sales, REOs. Those are a very small portion of what's going on, and a lot of our network are getting leads directly from equity sellers. That can come from people who are dealing with the death, disease, divorce, a job change. They have to get out quickly for very specific reasons. Or maybe a landlord who's looking to retire and they just don't want to have to deal with, kicking tenants out and all that kind of stuff. So issues, and there's hair on it. It's not like you're just buying an REO that's got free and clear title. It's more complex. So yeah, I mean, you're right. If they were to open this up and somehow pre-qualify the investors, somehow know that they had funding behind them, yeah, this becomes another avenue of leads. Very competitive, however. So, a lot of the mom and pop real estate investors probably aren't going to be able to buy at some of the numbers that these hedge funds are buying. And it is a little disappointing because there is always a sense that some of these hedge funds don't necessarily care anything about the local market. It's all about numbers, where mom and pops, for the most part, are going to be located in the jurisdiction and care, hopefully. Then again, you've got politicians who hate landlords as well. So what are you going to do?
It's a complex web,
It is.
I think the 15 is just because they're running a test in two markets. It's not clear that this will actually become a full-blown product. I suspect that it will because, Inman put up a post like within a day saying that there's, one of the agents that are participating in this got 48 listing leads off of instant offers, right? 48. And when I think about how desperately, the realtor on the ground wants listings, that's sick, right? Especially in this low inventory environment to get 48 listing leads. I mean, if she converts 10%, right, that's 4 listings. I mean, there'll be a line, there'll be like a cordon of realtors around Zillow's office just like yelling at them saying, take my money. So I suspect this will become a product. But, we'll see what the full product looks like when they come out with it. I suspect it'll be, hey, it's open to all investors as long as you qualify and you can prove that you actually have the money. Do you know what I mean? And you're not a con man or, what have you.
For more information on hard money loans and upcoming events with the Norris Group, check out thenorrisgroup.com. For information on passive investing with trust deeds, visit tngtrustdeeds.com.